Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, which is brought to you by our friends over at Greta, the home of our electric watch parties during the season and our off-season chill spot at this time of year. Make Greta your spot to eat, drink, and play for the rest of this summer. My name is Dave Guidrelli. That is Harmon Dial. Harmon, I've been starting to plan. We got some fun stuff going on at Canucks Army this year, and I always do this. I always share things that aren't finalized yet, and then either they fall through or they're different than how I made them out to be, and then I feel bad. But all I'm going to say is we've got some fun stuff planned this year. And a big part of what we have planned is the watch parties at Greta. And I'm excited. You came to the watch party last year. It was so much fun.
Yeah, you got to tell me more once we're off stream.
Yes. I will say, if you want a hint, go look at what our sister website over at Oilers Nation, what they do. They got golf tournaments. They've got brunch with listeners of their shows and stuff.
Damn, that's cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. And of course, they're also a partner with Greta. They do watch parties. Greta's are everywhere in the Nation Network spot for watch parties, and they do a phenomenal job over at Greta. So, presenting sponsor of today's show, shout out to them. Another shout out is in order for the Wall Center, where we are coming to you from. Looking for your next meeting space? Contact the Wall Center for all your event needs at sales@wallcenter.com. Speaking of fun stuff, Thursday episode, folks. It is time for Family Feud. Our technical producer, Jacob Lazar, take it away.
Hello and welcome back to Canucks Conversation Family Feud. I'm your man, Jacob Lazar. And Quads has the headphones on. So Harmon going first again today. Harm, last week, a little difficult. A little bit easier today. I think you guys are gonna pull through here. We will see how the chat responds to some of these questions. I think there's a few perplexing answers in here, but nothing that I think will be out of your capabilities. All right, we're gonna put 30 seconds on the clock for you, Harm. Timer will begin when I finish reading the first question. And if you don't know an answer or you need to think about it a little more, just tell me to pass and I will skip on to the next question for you. Quads, can you hear us right now? He sure can't. He sure can't. All right. Ready, Harmon?
Let's go.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in the Canucks management group to build a cup-winning team?
7.
Which opposition NHL goalie would you least want to face in a playoff series?
Vasilevsky.
Who is the most overrated Canuck of all time?
Mark Messier.
Who is the most underrated Canuck of all time?
Yannick Hansen.
Which away arena do you most want to travel to and see the Canucks play in?
T-Mobile Arena.
Good work. 5 seconds to spare. You can tap Quads, and I'm going to tally up your points here.
How'd you do?
We'll see.
I don't like the sound of that. What happened? Don't tell me. You can't
know.
tell me any answers. But was it hard?
I think it's fine. It's not as bad as last week.
Okay, not as bad as last week. That's what we want. We could have won last week. We could have won.
Yeah.
With one of us came through with Luongo. For those that didn't see it, we fumbled last week's. But
so Quads, Harmon got you 90 points.
Put it there. Isn't
Not
that what you got
bad.
last week?
Yeah,
that is
it's
exactly
not
what you
great.
got
Now,
last week.
I will
It's good.
say
It's a good number.
there are 2 number 1 answers left on the board, and Quads, if you get both of those, I will not guarantee you a win, but the expectation would be a win.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to put 30. Sorry, I actually gave Harmon the 30 seconds instead of the 25. The good news was he had 5 seconds left, so
Nice. There you
he
go.
still finished on time.
Okay, give me 30.
So resetting to 30 seconds for
I
you.
don't know why I've never been nervous. I don't want to lose 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
I really don't want to lose 2 weeks in a row. Like we're gonna have a losing record on the concept we came up with.
Which, by the way, by next week, or maybe, I know we're going to have some different shows going on with some vacations,
Yeah.
but by the time the regular season rolls around, I'll have a whole scoreboard going on screen for you
Excellent.
guys. It's going to be fun.
Excellent.
Anyways.
Okay. Fire me up.
So just a reminder of the rules. Time will begin when I finish reading the first question. If you give one of Harmon's answers, you'll hear the buzzer. And if you need to skip, just say pass, and we will come back to it at the end if there's time.
Okay.
Quads, are you ready?
Yes.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in the Canucks management group to build a cup winner?
9.
Which opposition NHL goalie would you least want to face in a playoff series?
Igor Shesterkin.
Who is the most overrated Canuck of all time?
Elias Pettersson. I'm going with the voters. Yeah.
Who is the most underrated Canuck of all time?
Alex McGillney.
Which away arena would you most want to travel to and see the Canucks play in?
Vegas. Seattle.
Good work. All right. I can tell you right now, you got a 0 for one of those questions. I'll let you determine which one.
Seattle.
Give me a couple seconds.
Yeah,
here
take
to
your
tally
time.
The points.
Damn it!
I think we lost this one.
I don't think we won. But McGillney is a good answer.
McGillney's a good answer.
He is the most underrated Canuck of all time.
I said Hansen. Just
okay, that's fair.
That's not.
He
good,
won
but
Unsung Hero Award like every year. So
Dakota
he's the definition. Dakota Joshua. Okay, overrated. I need to explain myself.
I just said Messier because I feel like enough
That'll
people
work.
hated
That'll
him
work.
that, you know.
I said Elias Pettersson because I think there are going to be enough Elias Pettersson haters out there.
I don't know.
Of all time, though, like, come on.
I don't think so, man.
I bet that's the 0. I rag on Petey for no reason. If it doesn't get us any points.
Question?
All right, guys.
The first question. Okay, so I gave a 7. It was cup winning team. If it was just a cup contender, I gave him a 7. I feel like 7 was probably going to be less popular.
I almost
than
said
8.
10, but then I was like, okay, they're not at the cup. Okay. Let's see. Yeah,
So
Jacob, take us through.
Are you guys ready?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in the Canucks management team to build a cup winner? I specifically phrased it like that. You guys talked about this on the show last week.
Yep.
But I wanted to make it a little more of a thinker, right? Like, if it's just how confident are you in the management team? Oh yeah, an 8, 9, 10, easy. Making a cup winner, spread it out a little bit.
Yeah.
Harmon, you said 7.
Yeah.
That was 23 points.
That's
Quads, you said 8. Or sorry, you said 9. 9 was only 16 points. 8 was the overwhelming number one answer with 47 points.
I was gonna say 8.
We were right, but
Well, here's the thing. I was gonna.
Other side of it, both sides of it.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Now, which opposition goalie would you least want to face in a playoff series? Harmon, you said Vasilevsky for 18 points. Quad, you got the number one answer with
Let's
Shesterkin.
go. That's good. That's a cup final matchup.
The number 2 answer was Hellebuck with 20, but based on his playoff resume, I would not.
Yeah,
have
no,
answered
that's
with
I
Hellebuck.
want to face him. Okay, Shesterkin, how many points did I get?
35 for Shesterkin.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay, so we're doing okay. We only need 60 points now, Jacob?
Yeah. Unfortunately, with the most overrated Canuck of all time, you answered Pettersson, which got you 0 points.
I thought someone. Okay.
Messier was the number one answer.
Good.
Harmon.
Good job.
Some other ones in there. Bo Horvat with 7 votes.
Okay. See,
Trevor
I was
Linden
thinking they
and
were
Kirk
at this
McLean
level
with 5. Stan Smeal was actually tied for the number 2 answer with Horvat with 7.
Wow, that's a big spread. Okay, that wouldn't have helped us
That's
much.
a tough
okay,
one.
yeah.
This one here was the most widespread one, so this was going to be tough to pick up points, but you guys managed to get the number 1 and number 3 answers. So Alex McGillney was the most underrated Canuck of all time. 9 points for that. But that was the number 1 answer. It was only 9 points.
Oh my gosh. Man.
Yeah. Yannick Hansen got 7 points there.
Okay.
Burrows with 7. Cliff Ronning had 4. 5 votes for Tyler Mott, which was interesting.
Okay.
But there was all kinds of names.
Yeah,
of course,
yeah.
Sammy Sallow got a few in there.
Okay.
I saw an Antoine Roussel.
So we lost, is what I'm gathering.
Now, what I will say is someone put JT Miller in as the most underrated Canuck of all time.
Oh my gosh.
Which is interesting, but I would find it hard to argue with someone like JT Miller being underrated. Someone also put JT Miller as the most overrated Canuck of all time.
Okay.
So he's one of the few that managed to make it onto both
I can't
lists.
believe I said Elias Pettersson. That was, I mean, it didn't cost us many points because all those answers sucked anyway, but okay, what else do we got?
Final answer here, or final question, is the visiting arena. So Harmon, you said T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. 21 points. That was the number 2 answer.
What was number 1? Oh,
unfortunately,
the
not
Garden.
the number 1 answer.
The
Quads.
Garden.
You said Climate Pledge Arena. That was the number 4 answer for 10 points.
Yeah.
30 points to MSG. You guys finished with 160.
Okay, I want to say this survey was harder than last week.
I don't think so. If you guys had gotten the number 8 on the first question, you guys would have won. So
Yeah, but last week was 2 obvious number ones. This was, and that one wasn't obvious.
It's just Shesterkin, 8, and Madison Square Garden were all obvious number ones. You guys got.
Well, here's the thing. Like,
if you guys have gotten
MSG's a dump. I don't want to go to MSG. I don't know. I'm just trying to justify.
But also, I was also thinking like Vegas is a lot closer, and I see so many Canucks fans in Vegas.
Yeah. Vegas was the number 2 answer. This one was an interesting one because we had a bunch. 2 people said they wanted to go to New Jersey, go to Prudential Center.
Let me tell you, I've been to Prudential Center. Never.
Yeah, you don't
ever
go.
There.
Yeah.
I don't like this survey. That was a bad survey. Sorry, Jacob.
Honestly, I think we lost, but I think we performed all right.
Yeah. You're gonna leave number ones on the board. You are going to leave number ones on the board. But
yes, unfortunately, you left the 2 biggest number one, or 2 of the 3 biggest number ones on the board, and that's why you guys lost. Hitting number ones on the smaller questions. Yeah, I mean, I will say that most,
which is harder to do. It's harder to do on the small ones.
The fact that you landed McGillney on the underrated one, pretty good. That was my vote, by the way. I voted for McGillney on the most underrated Canuck of all time.
Yeah. Literally, that's the right answer.
It is the right answer.
And but the visiting team arena, like I said, some interesting ones in there. A couple Bostons, some Montreals, Torontos.
Oh, I can't believe it. Okay, so we're 1 and 2
how many
on
points
the
did you
season.
get total?
160.
You guys got 160.
Yeah.
So
total.
we're 1 and 2, and we got 164 last week. So we're 1 and 2 on the season.
Yeah.
First week we got like 380 points or something like that. Last week 164. This week 160. Jacob, that survey was too hard. We need an easier survey next week.
You guys got to tell the fans. They're the ones voting.
We need a happy medium. We need a happy medium on the survey. And people were just wrong about McGillney. Like McGillney should have had 89 votes and we should have won. I didn't purposely pick his number. I don't know why. That was
I will say it was Messier for overrated made sense to be the number 1, but a little surprised McGillney. And even Burrows, I could have seen maybe picking up more points than he did.
I feel worse about our week 2 performance than our week 3 performance.
Yes, this was a good performance.
Yeah.
I guess
this
I will
a
have
moral
to make
victory.
I will have to
it's
make
a moral victory.
It's a hard
easier.
league to win in.
Yeah, we're gonna find the happy medium of how difficult the surveys need to be because we had one reply. Obviously, we didn't click the survey. But we had one reply to the tweet on Canucks Army. Like, are they even gonna come close to winning? That survey is way too hard. And I sent it to Jacob. I was like, what did you do? So
no, it's not that bad. Now, unfortunately, I do have to play.
Unfortunately, he says nothing gives Jacob as much joy as hitting that button. Anyways, that was Family Feud.
Good work, guys.
We'll be back next.
We'll be back.
Actually, we won't be back next Thursday. Speaking of which, Jacob's gonna get the next survey out pretty quick here. He'll have it out at some point, probably in the podcast description, I'd say, for today's show.
It'll probably be in the podcast, and we'll tweet it out. So if you are listening on YouTube right now live, make sure you check Twitter a little later today if you want to get in and vote on the next survey.
So as we wait for Steven Ellis, who's going to join us on this show, as you can tell by the title of today's show, I'll tell you our schedule coming up here. I'm taking vacation for the next week and a half, like 2 weeks, till September 1st. I'll be back. So I'll be back September 1st. We're going to come back and have some shows. We'll be back to 2 shows a week starting in September. But for these final 2 weeks here, next week and the week after that, we're going to be doing 1 show a week. Next week is going to be us on Tuesday here at the Wall Center. And then the week after that is going to be you and Irf also on Tuesday. You guys are going to do Family Feud without me. I'll be pissed off if we're 1 and 3 and then you guys get the win. I'll be very upset. We're never doing it again. I'm canning the idea. No, in all seriousness. Yeah. So next week, 1 show. Week after that, 1 show. Back to 2 in September. Taking a little vacation. I'm very excited for it, but I'm leaving in the back half of next week.
Bali?
So no, not Bali. No, I don't share where I go on vacation. I don't do that.
Oh yeah, too much of a big shot.
Too much
Doesn't
of a
want to
big
be
shot, that's right.
disturbed.
Dude,
and recognized.
paparazzi.
Exactly, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
100%.
Yeah. What's the funniest interaction you have with someone recognizing you?
Well,
Want to save it for anyone else?
Yeah.
Okay. Remember that one. Write it down. Someone write it down and remind us to answer that question. Let's get to Steven Ellis, who joins us now. He is brought to you by the Bad for Baseball podcast. Nick Palilog and Adam Peddle host Bad for Baseball, the most unapologetic, in-your-face baseball podcast that delivers weekly unfiltered takes on the good and the bad around MLB and the world of baseball. Since 2020, Nick and Adam have been entertaining Blue Jays fans with their commentary and live streams on their YouTube channel, Blue Jays Today, but their love of baseball goes much deeper than for just one team. After the Shohei Ohtani free agency drama, the guys knew they needed an outlet to talk ball outside of the hometown team. New episodes of Bad for Baseball drop every Monday and Thursday on their Bad for Baseball YouTube channel or wherever you stream your podcast. He joins us now, Steven Ellis, Daily Faceoff's prospect guru, dropped today his rankings of the Canucks prospect group. We're going to get to that. Steven, How you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to my own vacation next week, and I'm kind of done watching. I've watched probably 50 or 60 hockey games this summer. I'm kind of bored of doing that.
What did you think of the Hlinka? Like, I just saw empty stands, and I didn't watch a game. I'll be honest, I didn't watch a single game.
So the attendance for those tournaments never do well. But for the gold medal game in 2018, I was told it was a sellout. It
Hmm.
was they were only selling out half the rink in these games, and they weren't selling out there. So it's kind of what I would expect. Unfortunately, Canada just doesn't support hockey in the summer. And if that tournament was back in Czechia like it usually is, that whole medal round is sold out. But because it's in Canada, unfortunately, Canadian hockey fans suck. I'm just being honest.
That's fair. Where is it next year?
It should be back in Czechia. They have been doing these alternate things every couple of years. Rumor is it's not going back to Alberta, so we'll see what happens there.
Okay, good to know. You drop your ranking today of the Canucks prospect pool. Just kind of walk us through that. What do you make of the Canucks prospect pool? Obviously, you have Jonathan Karamaki at number 1, but just as a whole, how is the Canucks prospect pool, I guess, relative to other contending teams around the league?
See, I'm going to be putting together like ranking every single pool, and it's definitely going to be in the top half. I'm not exactly sure where, but this is an above average pool. When you've got a good forward there in Lekaramaki, you've got a good defenseman in Tom Wielander, you got Artur Silovs. I'm still considering a prospect because he hasn't obviously played that full time in the NHL. But then you go to Pedersen, you go to Atu Ratu, our Steve Baines had a really good season. Like this team actually has a lot of good depth in it, which when you compare, like I know some Oilers fans specifically like Canucks, good team. We beat them in the playoffs. It's like, yeah, well, this is a team that was using essentially its third goalie in the playoffs and still looked pretty good. And for a team that no one kind of expected to do as well as they did. So you've got a team that looks competitive. It's got that core signed up for a long time. And then you've got a lot of valuable pieces from the prospect pool. Like this is when you look at this pipeline, you expect it to come from a team that's still kind of in a rebuild, but obviously they did this year. They're not in a rebuild. So it's definitely an exciting future that they got.
How big of a step did Lekaramaki take last season? Why do you think he was able to take that step? And moving forward, what should Canucks fans expect as a realistic ceiling for what he can be in the NHL one day?
Well, absolutely. That was a huge season for him. I remember watching him in that regular season last year and the World Juniors and thinking like, or I guess 2 years ago technically, and saying like, whoa, what happened? Like this guy, everyone was so excited about him based off what we saw at those international tournaments in the Swedish junior level, and he kind of fell off. But a big thing for him this year was just getting the opportunities after that playoff run that he had in the Allsvenskan, takes it to the SHL. He's playing with all this momentum. He then goes and has this awesome tournament at the World Junior Championship, and it just seemed like a player. Like when it comes to a goal scorer like him, with a guy with the shot that he has, you need to be able to play in situations where you feel confident in yourself. And the confidence just continued to really show to a level that we had not seen last year, where the puck started to go in. He seemed happier on the ice. Like that's a small thing, but seeing a prospect smile as much as he did during games, especially even when he got stopped, but he's like, I knew I could have scored there. I made one mistake, whatever. And he's kind of smiling to himself, like, I'm going to get you on that next play. Like that's a guy that is playing like with the right mindset. And I do think he's going to be a top 6 forward for the Canucks one day.
With him arriving to training camp, he's expected to, be in North America this season. Do you think he can be a dark horse candidate to play some NHL games at some point in the season, or do you think he'd benefit greatly from a full year in the American League?
He's one of those guys that I would think that if you're going to play in the NHL, it should be at the start of the season, play a couple games, get your feet wet, and then go to the AHL and see what you're able to do. I think that the big thing for him is they have to have a perfect spot for him. I don't think, like, you guys would probably know best with this current lineup, but like, is he going to be able to play top 6 right away? I don't think so. So if he's not, go send him to the AHL, let him get that, continue building on that confidence. It is going to be a different game. I think, there used to be a time where European players coming to North America, getting used to the different ice surfaces was a bigger thing than it actually is now. Now, a lot of European rinks are actually using an NHL size. And then he's also played in tournaments, obviously, in North America. So it's not like it's going to be a totally new thing. But you're still asking somebody to come switch their lifestyle. They've never lived in North America before, and going out there and trying to be productive right off the bat. I don't think that's going to happen. So sending him to the AHL, a team like Abbotsford that is going to have some skill to work with, I think just give him those opportunities. He's still young. He's only 20. maximize that ice time at an early age.
Oh, what can you tell us about Tom Willander? Like, how was his season? What does he kind of project as? When are Canucks fans going to see him?
He's a trailblazer. It's so rare to find European defensemen in the NCAA because most of those players will go and try to play pro hockey in the SHL, Liga, Czech League. But for him to go to college like he did was honestly very surprising. And from talking to some Swedish players at the U18s or the Hlinka, sorry, they look at what he did and the success he had and said like, oh, I could do that too. So that's pretty interesting, kind of seeing that route there. But he missed those couple games early on, but it did not take him a long time to kind of figure things out. And Boston University was a very good team, very competitive up until the end. And having Macklin Celebrini to pass to is probably not the worst thing in the world for production. But I think what really showed there was that he wasn't going to get all that ice time in the SHL. So he goes here, he's playing upwards of 20 minutes. I thought he looked excellent. He was good at that World Junior tournament too. And, speedy two-way player that I think is going to be a big part of the World Junior team again this year. I would be surprised if he turns pro after this next year in the NCAA, maybe spends a year in the AHL and then goes from there. And I think the key thing with pretty much most prospects in this lineup or in this group is no reason to rush them. If you think this team's going to be competitive right now, let that happen, and these players are naturally going to find their way into the lineup. But when it comes to Freelander, maybe it's 2 years before he's in the NHL. I do think he should play at least one full year in the AHL, kind of do the Simon Edmondson thing. But I think that he's going to be a guy that's going to be a big part of that top four for a long time.
Is there a Canuck prospect in the pool that you personally are a lot higher on than maybe the consensus?
You know what? It's funny because my list almost was identical to Dave Hall's from Canucks Army. So shout out to him. He's a smart man from reading his stuff. I do think I am a fan of Sawyer Minio. I don't know if I maybe have him higher or lower, but a guy that I think I'm a big believer in, especially watching him at this World Junior Summer Showcase last week, where you'd see these skilled guys like Cole Iserman, James Hagen's the top prospect for 2025, and Quentin Musty try to get around him, and he was just a pain in the ass. He also did spear Quentin Musty in the nuts. So, he's probably lucky the refs didn't see that. But that was a guy that he made himself so difficult to play against, and he kind of just stopped guys in front of the net. And it's interesting the way he plays. He's not a super aggressive guy. He's not, if guys in the rush, he's not going to try to pinch and prevent it from getting close. He'll let you get close, but then he'll lay you out if you try to get too close, or he'll poke you with that stick. And just watching what he was able to do this year, just seemed really confident with the puck. And that's the thing, you want these guys to be playing with confidence, and you notice when that starts to fail. But he went from his draft year not really shooting the puck much to last year he scores nearly 20 goals because a lot on the power play, but he was willing to rush the puck in himself. He was pinching in, he was doing that stuff with the game, with the puck. So I've seen his game evolve in a big way in the last year, and I think that he's going to be an NHL player one day.
Okay, a guy I'm really curious about, and I was comparing after you said that. I looked up Dave Hall's rankings and your rankings. Very, very similar. The one difference, slight difference, is Melvin Fernstrom. Dave has him at 9. You have him at 10. Tell me about this prospect.
I think Fernstrom kind of just he's going to be a fringe NHL player. I think I liked him a lot more early in his draft season, but we're not talking about a guy who is going to go out there and beat you with skill. He's a very simple player with the puck, but he's going to bring that energy, and he was hitting everybody at the World Junior Summer Showcase. And I'd say we saw him at the U18 level be a point leader with the national team, but I think that also was more of an indication of how weak Sweden's offense was at the U18 level last year, and not that he was this great player. I think he is a good power play passer. He's not going to shoot the puck, but he's going to set the guys up that he needs to do that. And then, I think he doesn't have the hockey IQ right now at this level. I think when I'm talking about that, it's on speed, on the rush, he will sometimes try to skate the puck in, and then the play will fall apart when he should have just made a simple pass. I wish, like when I say he's a good passer on the power play, it's because when he's standing still, he makes it work. On the rush, I think that's where he needs to work on making those right passes. But I think he's got the energy level that will give him a possibility of being in the bottom 6 and being effective. But I'm not completely sold on him right now. I want to see him have a big year this year, kind of both ends of the ice, to really make me feel better about him.
Is 2025 going to be a strong draft class? How would you compare it to this past one, which was probably average or maybe slightly below in some people's estimation. Then, of course, 2023, especially from 1 to 10 to 12, was stronger than usual. How does 2025 kind of stack up?
I don't think it's going to be as strong as I was hoping it'd be. There's going to be some good players taken early. James Hagen's, like, his style wise is Jack Hughes, but he's not Jack Hughes. Porter Martone's a lot of fun to watch. That guy's, I think, 6'2", 6'3". He scores at will. He hits you, and he's a leader at every level. He's worn the C already for multiple teams, and there's a reason why he's so well respected. Matthew Schaefer is a very good defensive prospect. One thing that two things, as I say, this draft has for it that the last couple drafts haven't had is a lot of Quebec players. There's been a shortage of quality Quebec-based players, and we're going to see a lot of them this year, starting with Caleb Denoyers and Emile Goutte, who actually, they both looked really good at the Hlinka Gretzky. But then you got two really intriguing goalies, Canadian goalies specifically, that you just don't typically find at the high end of the draft the last couple of years, where Joshua Ravensburg, the WHL, 6'4" goalie, very easy to notice him out there. He might be part of the World Junior team in December. But then there's also who I think is a slightly better goalie, and that's Jack Ivankovic from the Brampton Steelheads. 5'11", so that doesn't help. But I've watched the Hlinka for a long time. He put on what I'd say the best goaltending performance I've seen of any goalie from a tournament perspective at the Hlinka Gretzky. So good goalies, some good Quebec players, not a lot of good defense, not as good depth right now, but a lot can change. I thought a lot of people, myself included, were kind of writing the 2024 draft off pretty early heading into the year. It wasn't the case near the end, but I'd say right now this is definitely weaker than we've seen in the last 2 years.
At this stage of his pro career, and I want you to think back a bit too to what he was when the Canucks traded for him, when he was drafted by the Islanders. What is Aatu Räty, and how much have those, I guess, expectations changed since you first saw him play?
You know what? I know in his draft minus 1 year, the year before his draft year, I was thinking like, yeah, this guy is going to be that player that's taken first overall. At worst, he falls to third. So for him to fall down to the 52nd, wherever he ended up, like, it just kind of showed like it shows you how much can change in a year. And it looked like a player who just wasn't interested to be out there. And I was very excited for this move to the Canucks because I thought, at the time, it looked like there was a clear path forward for him up to the NHL. Again, I don't think anyone expected the Canucks to be like a serious contender like they were last year. But I think the one thing for him is he needed a bit of consistency. He, played some NHL games 2 years ago and played some AHL games. This past year was focusing on just getting all that ice time in the NHL. I still think there's a future for him to be a middle six player. I think he needs to, just put in it. His mindset's got to be there every time, because you still see some games where he's just floating around, not working as hard as he can. But if he puts that effort in every single night, I still think he could be, a good middle six scorer that can do a lot. I don't know if I know he was drafted as a center. Maybe he goes to the wing and gets an opportunity there. I think that might be the better fit for him because he's not this superstar two-way player, but he still has all that skill and it's not going anywhere.
Okay, last one from me. Similar exercise. Think back to what you thought about him in his draft year. Vasily Podkolzin. I broke this down last week. I wrote about it at Canucks Army. Just the adjusted ceiling of what he could become in the best case scenario for Vasily Podkolzin. What went wrong for Vasily Podkolzin? And again, like, I ask you, how high did you have him? Because I went back and looked at a bunch of old scouting reports from public outlets and everything of what they were all saying about him. Some people had him as a top 3 lock for that draft. Others said, yeah, maybe he's a mid first round pick because you don't know what he's actually going to be, even though he has a lot of tools. What was your read on Podkolzin, and what do you think has gone wrong for him since?
So I remember thinking it was, number 10 was too high. You saw the skill that he had, and it was impressive to actually see him play a pretty decent role in his draft year for that World Junior team, which was almost unheard of for a player at that age. Like, Russia was not a team that brought draft eligible prospects. To see him do that was really cool. But you saw a player who was so hot and cold. And I think, I will say that video scouting has become significantly better in the last couple of years. And I think one thing, there was still a lot of question marks, like, oh, he played in the KHL, great. Oh, he played in the VHL, Russian Junior League, great. But he didn't really produce anywhere when he was playing for Scott, any of those levels. But he did so well at the World Junior level. I think that really kind of boosted his stock in a way that it really shouldn't have. Kind of like Klimovich, who I think he had like 5 goals in the U18 tournament, and they were all on the power play. Like this was someone who should never have been drafted as high as he did. And I was responding to someone on Twitter today. It's like, that was a stupid pick from the start.
Yep.
And I know some scouts were looking at him and saying, maybe he's a first rounder. It's like, no, he had 1 week of good hockey in a tournament where a lot of teams didn't have their best players because they were still playing in their club championships. But I think with Podkolzin, it's come to this level where I just really don't have a lot of faith in him. Like, you watch him in the AHL, the effort isn't always there. He still knows how to score, but it's almost like he would be kind of, if you want him to be an NHL player, you have to be a power play specialist. And I just don't think that's going to work out there. So realistically, I just don't know if he's got the foot speed. I don't know if he's got that two-way play or the pure skill to just kind of make it work. So we'll see. But at a certain point, like, he's got to make that next step forward, because he played nearly a full season in the NHL a few years ago, and last year he looked like an absolute nothing player. So
yeah.
I've been disappointed with his performance.
Way to put it lightly.
Yeah,
Steven,
yeah.
Thanks so much. We really appreciate you taking the time today. We will certainly have you back. Great work. And do you know when your rankings at DFO of each prospect pool, like when it's going to drop, where you rank them?
So I'm happily taking the next week off, but I believe it should be later this month. I think actually I want to say I'm back the last week of August. I think it's going to be on that Tuesday.
You got stuff to talk about that Tuesday with her.
There we go.
There you go. There's a show. Steven, thanks so much for joining us, man. Hey, maybe we'll get you back on that Tuesday to talk again. We'll see. We'll see. Put you right back to work as soon as you're back at it. Steven, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Sounds good to me. Thanks, guys.
There he is. Steven Ellis, the prospect guru over at dailyfaceoff.com. You can check out his work at, you guessed it, dailyfaceoff.com. He's got his Canucks prospect rankings out today. So be sure to go check out Steven's work. Any takeaways from that conversation? I want to talk about the Podkolzin thing a little bit.
Yeah, I thought that was super fascinating.
Super interesting to hear that Steven was one of the people that thought 10 was too high for Podkolzin. Because the majority of what I saw, the closer it got to the draft, the more people were like, yeah, no, top five for sure. Or top 10, at least top 10, right? So it was interesting to hear Steven say that he thought he should have been a later round pick.
Yeah, I remember at the time wanting one of the US NTDP guys. I would have preferred Caulfield,
yeah.
But I liked the pick at the time, to be totally honest.
I did too. Yeah.
I thought there was a lot of potential there. I saw the potential for him to be one of those like rare hard skill players.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so much of it also just went wrong with his development. And we've spoken about it before on the show, but the lack of opportunity and how it's affected, I think, his mindset, how timid he can be, not trusting his instincts.
Don't make a mistake. Don't make a mistake.
Not growing offensively. I think offensively, his growth was just stunted by a lack of opportunity. And he sort of became this safe player who isn't quite high-end enough defensively or smart enough away from the puck to be a defensive specialist.
When you're thinking don't make a mistake, it's hard to play hockey. It also leads to putting up like 70 points on Family Feud, which is what I've done back-to-back weeks. I've gotten less points than you each week.
Really?
Well, you got 90 and I got 74 last week. And
you're going
70
second, so
still.
Maybe it's time to have closer Harmon come
Yeah,
out.
you might be better at Family Feud than at this point. You might just have to come in after. You might have to. Anything else you want to say about Podkolzin?
Nope.
Okay. Let's get to anyone else after our poll question. Our poll question is about something that we'll talk about right off the hop. And anyone else. So let's bring up that poll question, which is brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Our poll question: is Brock Besser a top 20 winger in the NHL? Simple. Yes or no. 65.2% of people say yes. 34.8% say no. This obviously coming after the NHL Network ranking, having Brock Besser out of the top 20. We're going to break it down in our next segment. But for the poll question purposes, Harmon, I think if you're looking at this past season, yes, absolutely he was. Obviously, he was a top 20 winger in the NHL. But a lot of what we're talking about in this market is, okay, let's see him do it for 2 years in a row. In a good way. Like, let's see him go out and score at least 30 goals. Let's see him have a full, healthy season like he did this past season. Let's see him continue to be a really solid two-way winger. Let's see him be an efficient scorer around the net. Let's see what he can do in another season. Because I think if you take away last season, no, obviously he's not a top 20 winger. We wouldn't even be having this conversation. But he certainly was a top 20 winger this past season. So now the question is, going into next season, when you look at the league as a whole, are you putting Brock Besser in that top 20?
Yeah, and it sort of depends also looking at that NHL Network list, which we'll read out later. there's only two guys from there that you could make the case that, okay, Brock's better than them, but there are also other players that were left off the top 20 list that I'd probably put ahead of Brock if you were to sort of replace players. So you had it bang on. It really depends on what version of Besser do we get this season.
I'm going to say I'd be comfortable putting him as a top 25 winger. Like if the list went to 25, I have Brock Besser on that list. So let's get to it. That was our poll question, and it was brought to you by Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code VANBONUS when you sign up for an account. Let's get to anyone else. Anyone else is brought to you by the Vancouver Canadians. The Seas are on the road this week, but return for 6 in a row against Everett next Tuesday at Nat Bailey Stadium. There's a firework extravaganza on Thursday the 22nd, nooner at the Nat on Friday the 23rd, a good reason to leave work on a Friday, early on a Friday, and family fun Sundays on the 25th. These games are all sure to be packed, so get your tickets early. Don't wait. Call 604-872-5232 or go to CanadiansBaseball.com. Okay, let's dive into this ranking, Harm. NHL Network ranks their top 20 wingers. No real surprises. Like they have Nikita Kucherov, Matthew Tkachuk, Mikko Rantanen, David Pastrnak, Artemi Panarin as their top 5. And then I'm not going to read all of them, but no real surprises aside from, I think, Steven Stamkos at number 13, ahead of Jake Gensel, Kyle Connor, Brad Marchand, Alex Ovechkin, Travis Konechny. And I don't really think Alex Ovechkin should be on the list at this stage of his career. I think that's safe to say.
He's too one-dimensional, too poor defensively.
We're literally with Alex Ovechkin. The story is just, okay, is he gonna break the record? Is he gonna break the goals record? And that's all the Capitals are doing right now. Is let's see if we can let him break the record. Like let's see if we can get him there. So it's a cool story to follow. And of course, whenever the Capitals come to town, that's going to be a game that a lot of people want to see because you're always thinking, oh, this might be one of the last times we ever get to see Alex Ovechkin at Rogers Arena. So that he's a novelty act at this point of his career, right? Is he a top 20 winger? No. But we were throwing out names before the show and we looked at this list. Like a guy like Jesper Bratt should be on this list.
200%. Like that's a no-brainer to me. And honestly, a lot of it comes down to name brand recognition, right? That's why I think Stamkos and Ovechkin are a little bit too high, whereas Bratt doesn't get enough love. And also throw out Philip Forsberg playing in a quieter market there, 48 goals last season. And the difference is a lot of the wingers on this list, like Zach Hyman at 11, gets to play with Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
5-on-5 and on the power play. Forsberg put up 48 goals with Ryan O'Reilly as a center.
Yeah.
Without a single star line mate. So to me, plus he scored 40 2 years ago as well. So to me, I think Forsberg was too low on that list. Yep. I think Kaprizov should have 100% been ahead of Jason Robertson.
Oh, for sure.
Because Robertson has more help in Dallas, whereas Kaprizov has to kind of be a one-man machine there. Thought Tkachuk at number 2 was too high. I would have had.
Sorry. Oh no! You're sorry,
Matthew.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about Brady. Yes, number 2, Matthew Tkachuk.
I thought Pastrnak should have probably, like, I don't know, who would you take as the second best winger in the league? I'd say Pastrnak right now.
I also think it's Pastrnak. And I know that's a cheap answer to say the same one as you, but that's exactly who I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. You brought up Robertson. Robertson wasn't as good this past season. He just wasn't. He didn't score. He didn't even score 30, and he had 40 back-to-back seasons.
I'm going to give you a hot take.
Okay.
Mitch Marner at 10 is underrated.
Yeah. Okay. You're wrong, but okay.
Look, I've been a Mitch Marner hater. I think he's getting too much hate here.
Buddy, okay, I'll give you, maybe he's number 7 or 8 during the regular season. He's number 83 in the playoffs. So that cancels out.
Maybe.
Not maybe.
All I'm going to say is look at how many wingers can put up the points that he does with really high-end defensive ability. Mm-hmm. Plus, I think if you took him away from Toronto, I feel like he'd lose the yips in the playoffs.
If
you airdropped him into on Vegas, okay, I agree. If Mitch Marner is on the Toronto Maple Leafs, he's a 10. But if he all of a sudden is playing on the Vegas Golden Knights tomorrow, he is higher than the 10th best winger in the league, in my opinion. They have Nylander ahead of Marner.
Yes, okay, I agree. But Nylander had a better playoffs. I'm not gonna sit here and say, no, Mitch Marner, get him back up there. The question I want to ask you, as we kind of divert a little bit, what did the Leafs do with Marner? What's gonna happen with Mitch Marner?
I don't know. Also, you want to like Jason Robertson has a crappy playoff track record. Nobody talks about that.
No, you're right.
Like,
I mean, I don't.
Robertson has 38 points in 45 career playoff games, but that smaller market team, nobody cares.
Yeah. And I mean, last season was not a good season for Jason Robertson by his own standards.
Like, I think Marner's a better player than Jason Robertson. He's
I don't agree.
Really?
No, I don't think I agree. But I also really don't like Mitch Marner. Like I don't think you can ignore how bad he is.
He's
in the playoffs.
like,
because he's
I can't stand him in the playoffs.
He's like legitimately worse than Robertson in the playoffs. Right?
But
like
not by a lot.
No. Sorry. You're talking about scoring. How many puck over the glass penalties does Jason Robertson have? Because Marner has like 13.
Okay, come on. That's
that
such
matters.
a hyperbole.
That
That's
matters.
such a hyperbole.
What, the 13?
Marner's at least also,
okay, he's got at least 4.
Even if he's not scoring, he's actually contributing defensively or like driving play. Robertson, when he's not scoring, is literally doing nothing.
But he's getting scored on and taking penalties in the playoffs. That's what I'm talking about with Marner. Like, I mean, he is getting scored
over
on.
the course of like 7 playoff runs. He's made like one or two defensive mistakes
per playoff run,
not per playoff run.
What? Yeah. Maybe I'm being too hard on him. I don't think this is like a recency bias.
I can think of 1 or 2 puck over glass penalties.
No. I can think of 2 in like the same game. There was 2 in the same game.
Yeah, 2. Okay,
but he's done it more than that too. I have to look it up. Now I have to look up. Now you're making me look it up. Now you're making me look up how many puck over the glass penalties Mitch Marner has in his playoff career.
Be tough to Google. We'll see.
6. He's got 6. He's taken 6. Oh no. Okay, no. No, these are all puck over the glass. He's got 6 puck over the glass.
No, there's a tripping in there.
Okay, so
that's
5. 5. He's got 5.
He has 12 career PIMs in the playoffs, it says.
This was in 2021. He's got more since then. But in 2021.
Okay, yeah, there's more puck over the glass.
He's got 18 now. There's 5 puck over the glass.
Again, to clarify, I'd say a large part of my argument is my theory. I really think that if you take him away from the
You're right.
Toronto,
You're right. Sure.
That he'll get over.
I will give you that. Can we get this list back up, Jacob? We went a little off topic there, but can we get this list back up of the top 20 wingers? So when you look at this, there are Canucks fans. I see you out there that are going to look at this and say Brock Besser's completely slighted. I said it earlier in the poll question. I think it comes down to top 20 wingers right now heading into this season. How much do you believe in Brock Besser? Like, how much do you believe Brock Besser can repeat what he did this past season? Because if you look at just this past season, certainly he was a top 20 winger, but now it's about doing it again. And that's ultimately what it comes down to when it comes to contract extension, right? Like Jim Rutherford has made it pretty clear that the Canucks are comfortable going into next season and letting Besser go out and do it again, right? Like if he goes out and does it again, I think the Canucks are going to be happy to pay a lot of money for Brock Besser, even if they could maybe get him for slightly less right now, rather than going into next year, extending him, and then all of a sudden he's back to, not hitting 30 goals.
Yeah, we're all in wait and see mode. And
we all want Brock Besser to do well. Everybody wants Brock Besser to
I don't think it's an egregious snub that he's not on this top 20 list. I can see the case for it, but if we're taking into account more than just last season, I can totally understand, especially because a player like Travis Konechny, sure, he hasn't had like a 40 goal campaign, but also he's left on an island on Philadelphia with no help around him, right? Whereas Besser gets to play with Miller, he gets to obviously play with Hughes, Pettersson, and those types of guys on the power play as well. Konechny's he has to be the one man machine.
Is Jake Gensel the low, like he should be the most miscast on this list? He comes in at number 16. Like Jake Gensel is probably a top 11 winger on this list. I certainly have him higher than Stamkos. I think he's higher than Brady Tkachuk. I think he's higher than Zach Hyman. So now he's at 11 if we're using this list.
Yeah, I can see the case.
You're not going to say he's better than Mitch Marner. He is, though. Say it.
Yeah, okay. If it's game one of the playoffs, I want Jake Gensel over Mitch Marner.
If it's game one of the playoffs, you want like Dakota Joshua. Well, that Mr. Game One, but I don't know. Tyler Mott, most underrated Canuck of all time, according to 7 people. Anyways, okay. Anything else that you want to say about that specifically, the 20 wings list?
Yeah, I feel like Brady Tkachuk is too high as well at 12.
Yeah, he kind of stands out as being one that's too high. Okay, I'm gonna do a little story time. I told you about this right before the show. We were talking about this, and J-Pat wrote about it for us over at Canucks Army. But in a week that is filled with offer sheet drama with the St. Louis Blues and the Edmonton Oilers, my pal over at Daily Faceoff, Matt Larkin, wrote about every offer sheet that's ever happened. And I was reading that piece over at dailyfaceoff.com, and he pointed out that the Canucks and Blues were the start of teams, I guess, being offended by the offer sheet. The first retaliation offer sheet came from the St. Louis Blues to the Vancouver Canucks. So obviously people know Ryan Kesler signed an offer sheet for 1 year at $1.9 million with the Philadelphia Flyers in 2006. He's told the story about how after he signed that, the Canucks obviously signed him and he bought a boat with that money and named it Offer Sheet. He named his boat Offer Sheet because he got that money due to the Flyers signing him to an offer sheet. So again, this only happened in the salary cap era. So this is basically where the story starts. They were used those early offseason when it was first introduced. Offer sheets were being used. Like teams were using offer sheets. What changed was in 2008, the Canucks offer sheeted David Backes, who at the time had only played 2 NHL seasons, but the Canucks felt pretty comfortable saying, hey, we think this guy's going to be a part of our core. We already have Daniel and Henrik Steen coming up. We've got Ryan Kesler. We think David Backes would be a nice piece to the team. They would have been correct about that. As we know, David Backes went on to score 31 goals the very next season. And I'm trying to find the piece. I can't find it, so I'm doing this all off of memory. But the Blues didn't like that the Canucks signed Backes to an offer sheet. So they matched it days later. Not year or years later, days later. The Blues offer sheet Steve Bernier, who the Canucks had just traded for days earlier, an unproven Steve Bernier. They signed him to a $2.5 million deal. Mike Gillis at the time. Yeah, Mike Gillis was the GM at the time. He came out and basically said, yeah, it's a little more than we would have liked to pay Steve Bernier, but we'll pay it. So they get Steve Bernier, but that was the first time we saw a team really use the offer sheet as like a retaliatory measure. And obviously since then, the biggest example we have in recent years is Kotkaniemi and Sebastian Aho. Maybe the fact that Montreal came out better and Carolina probably didn't love when they look back at it, how that all went. Maybe we see, okay, teams aren't going to do that retaliatory offer sheet. I wrote about it today at Canucks Army about what the next step in the saga was. And I know I talked about it a bit on Tuesday. The Jake Neighbors thing really stands out.
They shouldn't do it, or they should not do it.
They shouldn't.
It makes no sense.
It doesn't. It just doesn't.
Bigger fish to fry.
You have bigger fish to fry. You also have the draft capital. Like that's the thing for the Oilers. That draft capital is better used to go out and get somebody on defense. If I were the Oilers, I've been thinking about this a lot since we talked about it with Tyler on Tuesday. And sorry, I don't want to move too far away from the Backes thing because I think it's really funny. But quickly on the Oilers, the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, okay, let Broberg go. Yeah. Get the pick, right? You get a second round pick back. Use that second round pick to go trade for a legitimate top 4 guy. Broberg's a unproven top 4 guy who you think might be good, but he's still playing the wrong side. You need to compete this year. Go use that second pick to go out and get somebody that you know is going to play in your top 4. Like that's what I do if I was the Oilers. Yeah. Sign Holloway, take the pick, trade it, go get that help in season. That's what I would do if I were the Oilers. They've got that cap space. They've got the cap space with the Kane on LTIR and everything. But anyways, that's what I was thinking about that. I quickly on the Backes thing, I just keep thinking about this because it's the first retaliatory offer sheet in NHL history. And since then, it's been frowned upon to offer sheet another team's players. Like, I need to go talk to an NHL historian because I just look at this and to me, it just looks like after this, teams are like, whoa, well, we don't want to do that. That upset the Blues. We don't want to do that ever again. So did an offer sheet to Steve Bernier kickstart I guess the Backes one, but Bernier was the retaliatory one. Like, I don't think St. Louis really wanted Steve Bernier, if I'm being honest with you. Within days, they go and give Steve Bernier a $2.5 million contract. If the Blues don't do that, are offer sheets more prevalent in today's NHL? I think maybe. Someone else might have got pissed off by it eventually, but that was my little history nugget, my story time for the day. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, there have been so many opportunities. I shouldn't say so many, but there have been maybe one per offseason where you could point at and go, that team's really vulnerable with not a star player, but an RFA that is young, has some upside, and you can probably snag him, and that contender is not going to be able to match. I mean, Tampa in the past has been vulnerable multiple times.
Chernak, like Bouchard, Evan Bouchard, we talked about it. It's crazy that Evan Bouchard didn't get offer sheeted last year. If I were the Oilers and Evan Bouchard didn't get offer sheeted, I must have been like, oh yeah, I'm going to be fine this year. Maybe they didn't get offer sheeted because they had Ken Holland.
Yeah. No, literally that's if Ken Holland was still GM of the Oilers, I don't think
but even last year, I wonder if that's why if Sam Bowman's the GM, right? If Sam Bowman was the GM back then, do they get offer sheeted?
Yeah, because now that I'm thinking about it, if it's frowned upon, let's say you or I was a pretty new general manager on the block.
Yeah.
The idea of offer sheeting Ken Holland, who's been in the league forever and has so many friends, I wouldn't want to do that.
That's the other thing. Canucks should be fine there, right? Nobody wants to offer sheet Jim Rutherford.
Probably.
I wouldn't offer sheet Jim Rutherford. Yeah, so Kessler was the first one. Did you know that? Kessler was the first offer sheet. I didn't know Kessler was the first. He was the first, very first. Yeah.
And looking at the list here, the Canucks, Oilers, and Blues have been involved. One of those teams has been involved in like half of the offer sheets in the salary cap.
Yes.
Era.
The second one came the very next offseason, and it was to Thomas Vanek from the Edmonton Oilers. They offered him 7 years at $7.14 million. The Sabres matched it. That same offseason, the Oilers offered another offer sheet to Dustin Penner, 5 years at $4.3 million, and the Ducks said, yep, no problem.
That led to the Brian Burke quote about the barn fight, didn't it? Isn't that where he challenged Kevin Lowe to a barn fight? Am I getting this?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Okay, this is it. This is the one we all think of, right? And throwing down a 5-year offer for a budding power forward in Penner. Lowe and the Oilers so enraged Ducks GM Brian Burke that Burke demanded he and Lowe throw hands in a Lake Placid barn. That's amazing. And there's a story. If you want to go read this story at dailyfaceoff.com, it's by Matt Larkin, Brief History of Offer Sheets in the NHL Salary Cap Era. He also links to his story where he spoke with Lowe and Penner about the contract, but that one ended with Anaheim receiving a first, second, and third round picks. So they said, yeah, take them. The next one after that was the Bacchus one. That one came the next offseason. So maybe the first one that, what's your definition of retaliation? Because I think challenging someone to a fist fight is a form of retaliation. So the first one that resulted in a counter retaliatory offer sheet was the Bacchus one. That one came the next offseason. Then, of course, a week later, the Blues offering an offer sheet to.
I remember
Steve Bernier.
I remember in Brian Burke's book, he said that the league immediately called him as soon as they
caught wind of that.
Caught wind of that and was like, "We're gonna suspend you for like forever if you actually go through with this."
Who would win in a fight right now of all NHL GMs? Like it's battle.
Like Julian Breezebot would be pretty high up.
What about Pat Verbeek? I wouldn't fight Pat Verbeek. Well, I guess he's only 5'9". I could take Pat Verbeek.
Craig Conroy.
Yes, that's a good one.
Rob Blake.
It would have been Mark Bergevin back in the day.
Yeah.
Have you seen how jacked he is?
that dude, yeah.
Actually, Kyle Davidson is quietly like he's in pretty good shape. Do you remember the Hawks did a video?
Yes, the man on the street thing.
No, not that one. There was a different one with Bedard, and they were playing like NHL 94 at like Nick Foligno's house, and Kyle Davidson was there too. Davidson's arms were pretty big in that, and he's pretty young. I'm not saying he'd win, but
I don't know if he'd win because like stamina matters too. I guess he's younger. I don't know. Battle Royal, like you're having a Royal Rumble. All of them are in the ring at the same time. I know it's not quite how the Royal Rumble works, but they're all in the ring at the same time.
I mean, if you were doing tag team GM and head coach, kind of like Alvin and Tocchet's chances, Rick would have to carry it.
Dude, Alvin, the first thing, and people might know this, when you talk to Patrick Alvin about his playing career, Patrick Alvin knows he was a bit of a dirty player.
He had a lot of PIMs.
He had a lot of penalty minutes. So as a tag team, Patrick Alvin, little eye scrape, right? And then Rick Tocchet comes in with a clothesline.
I feel like I know who'd lose, and I love the guy.
Who'd lose?
Eric Tulsky.
Oh, dude. I can't. I've said bad things about Eric Tulsky on this
Although
show.
look at his head coach that he's got with him.
Oh,
That's true. Rod the
it
Bud.
balances out.
Dude, okay, now Royal Rumble just head coaches. Rod Brindamore's up there. Rick Tockett's up there. But Rod Brindamore's younger than Rick Tocchet, right? Rick Tockett's still in good shape, though.
He's still in really good.
Yeah. Among head coaches, who would lose? Travis Green would hold his own, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't try to fight Travis.
I want to look at the list of head coaches. Let's see.
Yeah, take a look.
I mean, I don't like the odds of someone like Lindy Ruff at this stage. Just
Nope.
a little
I feel like
past-
You know
Jared
what?
Bednar would do pretty well.
Let's just say for guys like Lindy Ruff, if you're over the well, he's not that old. He's only 64. I thought he was way older than that.
Patrick Waugh would be interesting.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
saying
Waugh.
he'd win,
give
but
me Patrick Waugh as a dark horse for
Yeah,
sure.
he's a dark
John
horse.
Tortorella.
I don't know.
He's got the passion.
Don't you think Torts is
Wouldn't
kind
win,
of like
but-
the definition of an all talk guy?
Yeah. Oh, Craig Berube.
Oh, Berube, yeah. All right.
I don't know how we got onto this, but that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this one from Alec Taylor. Quads at 5'10. I'm not 5'10. I'm actually like 5'8, 5'9. Quads at 5'10. Only 5'9? Yeah, I could take him. That's what Alec Taylor wrote in the YouTube live chat. That's a good one. That's really good.
Before we wrap up, Harmon does have to tell a story that we
Oh,
teased
yeah.
at the beginning.
Yeah, you're getting
Oh,
recognized.
okay.
The weirdest story
Honestly,
of getting
I
recognized.
don't have too many weird stories.
I don't
People
have
been
weird ones
pretty
either.
respectful
Yeah.
over the time. I'd say two, like I'll give you two different stories. One of them was Rogers Arena Concourse. So I'm with my friends because they were attending the game. And this was when I was like still pretty new. So I wasn't experienced. No one teaches you when someone random comes up to you.
Yeah.
Like, how do you like deal with that situation and, and not be awkward, right?
Yeah.
So I was still awkward at the time. I'm with my friends. Someone comes up to me, very nice person. And it's not that they were weird, but they're just like, hey, are you Harmon, man? I'm like, yeah, nice to meet you, blah, blah. I basically didn't know what to say after. Because I'm like, I don't know you. Like,
Yeah. I've learned.
I've learned now.
What do you do?
I'll usually just ask them something related to like the game or their Canucks fandom or like just something related to Canucks fandom or the jersey they're wearing or just make an observation.
If they say, like, a lot of times, like, oh, I listen to the podcast. I'm like, oh, thanks for listening. And then I usually say, what's your least favorite thing about the podcast? Like, I'll ask people, I'm just like, what's your least favorite thing about the podcast? Most of them said Chris, which is why he no longer works here. No, I'm just kidding. I just like getting some feedback like that. Like when people are like, oh, I love your work. Listen to the podcast. I'm like, okay, what's your least favorite thing? If you ask a hater, like someone's like, oh, I hate your podcast. I'm like, oh, tell me more about that.
Oh, actually, you know what? I've got a really funny one.
I've got
a better one.
I've got 3.
So this is Penticton Young Stars, maybe a couple of years ago. There's a guy that comes up to me and Drance because we're together, asks for a photo. First he starts off by saying to Drance, like, oh, I'm sorry, I've probably taken shots at you a couple times, whatever. Take the photo, whatever.
Yeah.
We go back on Twitter and Drance realizes, like, hey, I think I know this guy because I think the guy ended up tweeting the photo. He goes on the guy's account, searches Drance, and it's just like the meanest comments.
No
ever.
way.
Like the most hardcore like insults, calling him an idiot like all the time, and it's like relentless. And we were like, oh my god, this guy's a Drance hater,
and he was so nice to
in
him.
person. Was like the biggest fanboy.
That is hilarious. I've never had I've had haters on Twitter. Like I've never had anyone tell me they hate me in person.
Yeah, I feel like if I saw somebody I hated in person, I just wouldn't say anything.
Yeah, like if they're like, oh, I hate your work. I'm like, oh, all right. I have a good comeback in case anybody ever says that to me. Test me. If you're listening to this and you see me in person, test me. I've got a comeback that'll just put you down to a new level of low. But anyways, so I've thought about that. You know, when you think about those scenarios, like, okay, if my school gets shut up, I know what I'm going to do.
What?
Well, you're always thinking that. You don't think like that?
And there goes our YouTube ads.
What do you mean?
What?
You guys don't think like that? I always think like, okay, if there's an attacker, like when I'm just walking down the street, if I'm like, okay, if there's an attacker, how am I going to deal with it? You don't think about that?
No.
I thought this was like every dude thought about this.
No.
Jacob?
No, and I mean, sometimes maybe, but certainly not with the analogy that you led off with.
Yeah,
that I am not going to repeat because that's how you get demonetized on YouTube.
Well, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm talking about.
No, we don't.
No, I'm talking, dude. When I'm always thinking about the scenarios. Always thinking about that.
Okay.
Maybe not the one I led off
What,
with.
do you have a bunker?
No. Dude, never mind. What was I gonna say? I was gonna say something. Oh yeah, so I've got three good ones that kind of.
What, are you gonna like, clock the guy in the face if he?
No. Of course not. Verbal put down, but it's a really good verbal put down. Anyways, this is the one I want to talk about. There's a couple. I've told this story on the podcast before. Do you remember this? I was in my building, walking my dog, coming home, right, and I'm talking to one of my neighbors, and some dude puts his arm in the elevator as it's about to close. He just goes, "Quads?" I was like, "Oh, hey." And like, I was mid conversation with my neighbor who doesn't know what I do for work. And he's like, "Oh, I love your podcast, man." And I was like, "Oh, thanks so much." And then the door closed. No idea who he is. Don't know his name. Might be listening to this right now. Shout out to him if he's listening. I said it when it first happened. That was a good experience. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I shouldn't call it a weird experience. It was just really funny that, like, you know, I was in my home, like going up to my apartment, and he like throws his arm in and he's like, "Quads?" And I was like, "Yeah." So anyways, there's that one. The other one, my now fiance, when we started dating, she was with her uncle, who is a regular listener of this show. And he was like, "Oh, I know the guy you're dating. Like, I listened to his show." And he just started playing it on the speakers at the house.
That's
like,
awesome.
At her cousin's house. So it was really funny.
3 years ago on a first date, I got recognized, and makes you just feel like the man.
Dude, that's the best. And then you just play it off like it's no biggie. Oh yeah, it happens all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, it happens all the
Doesn't
time.
happen all the time.
Does not happen all the time. We have 3 stories each. Okay. Let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day, which is brought to you by our friends over at Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Tonight, we're taking maybe a third start with the Baltimore Orioles. We're taking Zach Eflin to lead the Orioles to victory. We're taking the Baltimore Orioles on the money line against Victoria's own Nick Pivetta and the Boston Red Sox. You can get the Orioles to win at -155 odds. That one over at Bet365. That was our bet of the day. Be sure to use code VANBONUS when you sign up for an account at Bet365. Must be 90 plus to play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. All right, close it out there. You got any final thoughts?
I'm good.
Sweet. Let's do it. We'll be back next Tuesday, another Family Feud episode. For my co-host, Harmon Dial, and our technical producer, Jacob Lazar, my name is Eagle Jelly. Thank you so much for listening to the episode of the Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube.